Hello, everyone. My name is Joseph Schoolhand. I'm an account manager here at Populi, and one of two. We also have Nick Holloway, so some of you might know Nick, some of you might know me. Um, but either way, you can reach out to us whenever you want. You need some kind of training webinar or help going over specific details in Populi. For today, this is going to be a group thing. You will all be silent. Not that you have to be silent, but you'll be muted, so I won't be able to hear you if you ask any questions. But I will have this little Q&A window open on my other screen, so I'll be able to glance over at that and see if you ask me any questions, and I'll be able to answer them there. Just for housekeeping, make sure you put the questions in the Q&A, not the chat box. I won't be paying as close attention to the chat box. It's just harder for me to dig for that. So your question might get lost if it gets put in the chat box. So Q&A, and let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and kill my video and share my screen. All right, good. I'm gonna go ahead and log in here. My name is Felix Faculty for this fake school, but actually Felix Faculty in this instance is more than a faculty. He has the account admin role. Which lets him see everything in academics, including all the settings, all the reporting, and everything. So a normal faculty would normally not see that, so don't get confused by my fancy little name here for Felix. I'm just borrowing Felix to give him full academic access so we can go over the data slicer information. For those of you who are brand new to Populi, I'm going to run through just some basic ways how you can find help. I'm going to run through this every single time. So for those of you who are old hat at this, you're just going to have to turn your ears off for a second, or maybe you'll learn something new. But if you ever need help in Populi, this is where you find it, up here in the top right help button. There's a few different ways you can do it. If you like to search the knowledge base, in other words, if you like to research on your own, you can click here on search the knowledge base. If you want to reach out to one of us, one of our support team, you can open a support request. This is essentially like starting an email and sending it off to our support team. Our support hours are Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time. And our support people love helping you. All of our staff here are very committed to Populi. This is their career. This is what they love to do. And so they're not just a bunch of, you might have heard me say this before, but they're not just a bunch of college interns that we stuck in the basement who hate their lives and can't wait to get a better job. We invest a lot in our support team, and hopefully that shines through. Once they reply to you, it's going to end up in your email. If you lose that email, you can go here to view my requests and see their answer to your support request. You can also make a feature request here. You can interact with our other clients here. For all faculty and staff, we have phone support in addition to email support. Students, it's email only. And so if you want to ever call our support team because you need to work something through in a little more detail, the number is 877, the number 4, and the word Populi, 877-4-POPULI. Hopefully you can just memorize that right now. Here in the knowledge base, a few different things I want to point out. We've got promoted articles. This is probably where you found this reporting and bulk tasks and data slicer live training, which is what we're doing right now. I'll update this with a couple more here after today, probably. Getting started with their school's new Populi site has a bunch of training tutorials. You can send this out to people who need to learn how to log in. And if you forget that number on how to contact us, you can click that here. And you can hit different bubbles to help you do different things. Data slicer information is going to be in academics. So that's just a quick overview, how to find stuff, how to find help if you don't know how. And so there we go. So let's jump into why we're here. Lee says it definitely shines through about the support. Thank you, Lee, for saying that. I'm glad. I'll let the support team know. They love to hear things like that too. So your data slicer is going to be under college management, academics, and reporting. We have a variety of other reports here that you can dig into. But we're only going to focus on data slicer today because data slicer is probably our most powerful report. And usually when you have more power and more customizability, you've got more ways to do things wrong, and it can be more confusing. So you do have to have a little bit of an analytical brain to make this work. And if that's not you, maybe you want to have someone else on your team work on this. But you essentially, we'll start here with our filter section. And this is where we can pull up how we want to filter our students. And notice how I said students. This report is for students only. This is not going to hit your leads. It's not going to hit your faculty. It's not going to hit your advisors. It's not going to hit anybody else. This is just bringing back students. So let's grab some stuff here. Let's say I do age. And you choose the term because that would make sense. Populi wants to know, well, as of what term do you want their age? I could also do birth date. That way I'm using an actual specific day. For this example, I'll just use age, and let's say I want this greater than or equal to 22. So everyone who is greater than or equal to 22 as of this old data, fall 2013. And I can hit update. I've got 21 results here. And then I could say, well, what about, I also want not only everyone who's greater than or equal to age 22, and notice how we've got a lot of people fields here. So we can go by email, former name, preferred name, all kinds of things. We have a lot of student fields. Let me just scroll through all these real quick. So different enrollment data, GPA, degree data, all the same data that's considered in progress instead of at the end of the term, your programs, student ID numbers. Standing would be like freshman, sophomore, junior, as long as you have your program set up for standing. We have some financial fields. Now, as Felix faculty, all I have is the academic admin role. I do not have a financial admin role. So I can only see just a couple little things. I can add room plans for as per the campus life section. And so I can just pull data on that for financial. I can't see balances or invoices or anything like that. And then if I've created custom info fields along the way, then I can see those too. And yes, Robin just asked about custom fields, and here we go, right there. Good timing, Robin. So as I build custom fields, then we can pull these in. Now, these custom fields, long list, let's keep scrolling. These custom fields are gonna pull from all custom fields in Populi, not just your academic and student custom fields, but also your admissions custom fields, and just whatever custom fields you're allowed to see, depending on what your role is. So those will all be pulled into here. Now, remember, they're only gonna filter students. So if you've got a custom field on certain leads, but those leads haven't become students yet, they're not gonna show up on your report. They're just gonna show up for your students. Bernadette says, so we can't run reports on faculty. We do have a faculty table that you can run some reports on, but the data slicer only returns students. Tracy asked, where does field of study come from? I'm guessing this is, did you see this in the custom field section? Under people. Got you. I believe that that's a field that we have that lets you put like their previous degrees and things like that. So let me go to Simon student under info. I think it's under info. Well, you might have found a problem, Tracy. Oh, I didn't mean to type in your name. Felix, let's go Felix here. I'm sorry, Tracy, I'm not able to find that, the answer to that question, field of study. If you could shoot that over to support, then that would be great. Where does field of study come from? Let me check one more thing, and then I'm going to have to ask you to send it over to support since I'm not there. Sorry about that, Tracy. All right. All right. I also just got a question about activity feed stuff. The data slicer does not report on activity feed stuff. So if I have time to get to that toward the end, I'll get to that. But since today's focused on data slicer, you're going to have to reach out to support on that or to your Populi account administrator. So let's continue with our example. Another really handy, so we've got people stuff, we got student stuff, we have financial stuff, we have custom info fields. You can only see as much as you're allowed to see. Because I'm an academic admin, I have a very limited view of the financial information. One thing that's really handy is student role status. And this is just, is their student status active or inactive? Now in Populi best practices, once you grant a degree to a student, you're going to make their status inactive. You're going to let their student role status stay there, but you're going to make it inactive. Let me show you what this means real quick. So let's go with James here. James has his student role here. And so I'm going to uncheck this, make it inactive, and then I'll need to enter an exit date and exit reason. He graduated or whatever. I don't want to delete it completely because you don't want to delete stuff that you want to keep historic data for. You just want to make it inactive because he's no longer a student, he's graduated, he's moved on. And even if he's an inactive student, as long as you keep his user access here, he'll still be able to log in and update his contact info and interact as an alumni with his friends and stuff like that. So the student role status is pretty handy. So I don't want to see anyone whose age was as of that date who, was part of my school a long time ago. I want them to currently have the student role status equals active. That keeps us at 21 results. So this is kind of my criteria. I'm using and, which means they need to both match. This needs to be true and this needs to be true. But I could also create even more complex fields here. So let's say I want those two things to be absolutely true. And then I want cumulative GPA in the undergrad program as of this term to be a 3.0. And here I'm going to switch to or. So I want their GPA to be, I'm just looking for 3.0s across multiple programs, both graduate and undergraduate, greater than or equal to a 3.0. And I'm using or because I don't care. I want either or. Whether they're graduate or undergraduate doesn't matter to me. So I want both of these, age and role status, and I want either these two types of GPAs. The reason, in case you're wondering, some schools might not run into this, but the reason we have GPA by program is because at the program level is where you define what the GPA is going to be for that program. You do, if you've watched the academic setup, you do set up your grade scale under the settings area, and your programs will by default submit to that global grade scale. But if you want, you can change GPAs on a program by program basis. So if you've got a nursing program and an architecture program, and those two have very different GPAs, then you can change those program by program, which is why I have to actually define it by program here. I'm going to go ahead and hit update. That brings us down to 10 results. So there we go. And I only have one student who actually has the graduate level program. Notice how I can then click these columns and sort. Here I can do age, youngest to oldest. I'm looking at a question real quick. Bernadette asks, what's Populi's best practice suggestion for collecting race ethnicity info from students? Do a lot of schools ask for this info at the application stage or after enrollment? The easiest thing to do in Populi is to build it into your application. You're going to want to make sure you're pulling in as you set up your application, and you'll have to look at our application videos to see the specifics on how to do this or reach out to support. But you're going to want to make sure you link that field on the application to the specific race ethnicity IPEDS field, because obviously iPads ask for race ethnicity in kind of a very unique way, sometimes even an unintuitive way, I think. But I'm guessing you want to report to iPads, so you need to ask how to actually have that field there. Also, you're going to need to, as I understand it, according to the iPad stuff, make sure that it is not a required field. So they aren't required to give you that information, but they can opt to give you that information or not. If they do give you that information, it will show up on preset. If they don't, then it'll show up in preset. We have our iPads reporting stuff. So if they do give you that and they end up becoming a student, then all that data is going to be there. You'll just be able to pull those reports. So that's why it's, I think, the easiest way, because the student fills it out or the applicant fills it out and it just is a part of the record. If they don't fill it out, then it's going to be an unknown on the iPads, which is allowed if they decide to withhold that information. Later, if they didn't fill it out and you want to ask them again, then you could manually go and fill it out. But really, the only time the student can enter it is on the application. So that's why that's a handy time to get that there. Good question. All right, so we have the structure set up. We're down to 10 results of just using my filter. I've kind of showed you how the ands and ors might work. And now we've got some other options here. We've got columns, aggregate, reports, reset, and actions. Let me explain some of these. Reset's really easy. Reset just means it wipes all this out and starts me from scratch. Columns, we'll explain in a sec. Let's go to aggregate real quick. Aggregate lets me take that filtered data and I can aggregate it by some kind of piece of information. So let's go with the iPad's gender. And so we've got it split out here and we give a little count. And so this is taking those 10 students filtered there and just splitting them out. Or I could say home city update. And so Populi will show me some information here. These graphs here are interactive so that you can see how we got something floating around there that I can see with numbers. They're kind of cool. If I decide to export this though, unfortunately this graph only works in the interface, so it's not going to come out. You'll just have the data here come out and you have to create your own chart or graph in Excel. Hopefully you're handy at doing that. Notice how we have race ethnicity and then iPads race ethnicity. So iPads, I've only got a few people who filled out their race ethnicity and no one else did. So here's why I've got that big unknown. So just some handy ways to look at the data. I've already filtered it down. Now I can aggregate it and look at some just different breakdowns. If I want to export the data and maybe add a few extra columns to my export, I can do that here by clicking on columns. So let's say I want to add to my export phone number. And I'll have it be primary, but I could zoom in more specifically on homework, mobile, but this is primary is just whatever they have starred on their profile. There'll be a little star there. And so it'll be marked as their primary one that they want to be contacted by. So I can hit update. And I've got some more data fields. Phone type, is it private or not? Is it primary or not? And what is the phone number? And you can see some of this data I don't have filled out for some of my students. All right, once I've got this built out, then I can use my actions section. So I can export this whole thing to XLS or CSV. If I had been using the aggregate side, then I can export that as a spreadsheet, just that aggregate information. So it would just show a table with unknown 9, white 1, according to the iPad's categories, because I chose the race ethnicity here, and I could choose some other things and export different ones. If I want to email this group, I can hit that, send them a text message, apply communication plan. If you don't know what those are, you can check those out in communications. I can remove communication plan. So these are things I can just do in batch. Hit apply and then choose my communication plan, choose who that communication plan is assigned to, myself or somebody else, and then start date. And then it will go. I'm just gonna run through these. I can enroll all these students in a course in batch. I can export all their transcripts for these 10 students. I can export the ID cards for these 10 students if you have those set up. If you don't have those set up, reach out to our support team. I can print address labels. Let's say I just want some labels to put on some postcards. I can do that from here. I can give them all a tag so I can find them more easily later. I can untag all of them. I can set a certain custom field that I previously created. I can give a certain value to these 10 students. I can edit their honors. I can lock results. There's 3 different locks in Populi. We have a registration lock, which means they are not allowed to register for future courses. And I've got a grades and transcript lock, which means they can't see any of their grades. And I can put the reason in here, and this will be visible to the students. So when they go to try and register, they'll see why you're not allowing them to do that, or why you're not allowing them to see their grades if they try and go to their transcript or see their grades anywhere. There is a third lock. It's called the financial lock, and that's just a combination of registration and grades into one lock. But because I do not have the financial admin role, I cannot apply that lock right now. Down, I can unlock a bunch of students in batch. I can add or subtract advisors from this group of students. Maybe I could add an advisor to all these folks or remove an advisor from all these folks. I just need to search for the advisor. I could even do myself. Well, I don't think Felix is an advisor right now. Let's see, who do I have who's an advisor? Well, I think you probably get the idea. Joseph Schooland has the advisor role, so I could add him to all these students. I could manage their campuses if you guys have multiple campuses, so I can move these from one campus to another. And then finally, I can save as a new report. So we'll call this age/GPA. GPA, there we go. Age/GPA, and hit save. And so now I've got this report in my report section, age/GPA added by Felix faculty on this date. I can delete it, or I can load it, like if I came in here brand new. Someone asked, John asked, can you use the data slicer to show a list of everyone you have a lock for? I don't believe you can use the data slicer to do that. Well, I believe we tag them. We have a tag for locks, so we probably have to do it by tag. Is registration lock. So whenever you lock someone, they get a tag, so you'd have to search for it by tag, or you can just search for tags here, and it will show everybody who has that lock. Right here. Good question. All right. So now let's say this whole time we've been Felix faculty, who is not really faculty, or not just faculty, he's also an academic admin. Let's say we log out as Felix and someone else comes along, like Joseph Schooland, who has all the roles, and he comes in here to academics and he goes in here to reporting. And he sees the data slicer, it's empty, but you can pull up reports and see that Felix faculty created a report for everybody to use. And so I can hit load, and here we go. There's my report. It's got not only the filter, but the extra columns with the phone number. And now, because I also have the financial admin role, I can go down here to the financial fields and look at this. So I now am not just limited to term, room plan, and meal plan, but I've got all kinds of stuff, different balances, unpaid invoices. So I can run some data based on the financial knowledge that I have. Now, this is only going to work for someone who has both the academic admin role, or at least a registrar role, some kind of academic role that lets you see the data slicer report. You could probably do this with an academic auditor role. So that way they could look at this data and export the data, but not be able to change anybody's data. So if you want to give your financial person access to this, that might be the best way to go. Give them the academic auditor role. And then if they also have the financial admin role, then they can run some reports in here with this. And then one other place that a lot of stuff shows up for me, if I've got the academic or the financial admin role, is here. So now, instead of just being limited, you can see this list is quite a bit longer than it was before, and I can do things like manage tuition schedules. So for these 10 students, I could add or remove or replace whatever tuition schedules they might have. I could manage their refund policies. I could apply charges or credits. I could add a payment plan and batch to these 10 students. Set their SAP status, generate enrollment agreements for all these folks. All the rest of these are the same, except for lock now has the financial lock added to it also. I don't think I hit this one before. The academic admin can do this too, but when you make someone a user in Populi, that means they have a login and they can go into Populi themselves. They'll get an email inviting them to create a password. All of you guys have probably done this yourself and helped other people do it. But you can do that one by one, student by student, or you could do it in batch right here, create users. I have a question from Brenda. Is it possible to have a field or add a custom field to show a student with an ICER received? From this report, I don't believe it will track whether or not they've received their ICER. You could create a custom field, but that would create extra work. The easiest way to find ICERs is to go to 8 applications and ICERs if you're using Populi independently of the Department of Ed and uploading your ICERs to Populi. Or if we've interviewed you and talked with you to see if this is a good fit, it's a special feature for your financial aid people. We've got a Department of Ed integration where we have a SAG log that will track ICERs that have come in. So those would be the places you need to find that. That is all I have for Data Slicer. I did have a question earlier about activity feed reporting. Unfortunately, there's no way that you can do any reporting on activity feeds in batch. You can go to a specific student and you can look at their activity feed and show it by notes, emails, text messages, letters, files, or to-dos checked off. Obviously, all the stuff is going to go into the activity feed as I check things off with the date and time and person who did it. I can also filter it by particular people who might have left something here. And then I can also do a change log for the student to see why, I can look up all changes that have happened, who made the change and when the change was made. And this is just a record so that I can make sure nothing wonky happened with the student. But that's all the reporting you have for activity feed. You can't do it in batch across a bunch of students. It's just one student at a time using these little filters right here. Can you use the data, John asked, can you use the data slicer to see the current list of students you are being charged for? John, I will let you, I want to dig into that a little bit. Are you saying the current list of students that Populi is charging you for? I'll wait till I get confirmation on that before I finish answering that question. Harry asks, can the slicer indicate people with disabilities? We don't have a built-in field that tracks disabilities, but you can create a custom field to track it yourself or a tag. I've got one right here. So this is one that someone just made up. So this is not something built into Populi, and it might not be the correct way of displaying it, but you can do that either in a custom field or a tag, and then pull in that tag. John says, yes, that's correct. The students we pay for Populi every month. There isn't really an easy way to find the students who you pay for from the data slicer. Because like student role status is active, you'd think that would be it. But you might have a student who's active, but they're on leave of absence, or they're not attending any summer classes. And the way our pricing works, which for all of you is published, by the way, we make sure all our clients pay the same price, and that's according to this published price here. $199 per month plus $7 per month for billable student. Billable students are full-time, part-time auditing students who take at least one course in a calendar month. So a student could still have an active status because you consider them to be an active student, but they're just not taking summer courses, or they're just on a leave of absence. But you still want them to log in and be able to register for future courses or whatever. Because they're not actually in courses, then we would not charge you for them, but you still have them active. So we're literally just counting, for lack of a better term, butts and seats for a particular month. And that would go into online students too. So and we're looking at their academic record. We're not looking whether they'll log in or anything like that. The best way that you could find those numbers is if you are a Populi account administrator or a Populi billing contact, you will be able to click on your name, click account and settings, and see this little account button here. Once you go there, you can go into invoices and payments, pull up one of your invoices, and we will give you a list of all the students and the courses that they were enrolled in or audited for the particular billing period of that invoice. And you have 30 days to contest this. So we're very transparent. We show you all the students that we counted to come up with this student rate number. So this is 40 students here. And you could every once in a while just do an analysis to make sure that that number is correct. We are done. Unless you have any other questions, I can hang out for a little bit since we're finishing earlier than the hour. So fire some questions this way. Bernadette says, can you show us the faculty table mentioned earlier? Yes, in academics, under academic term, you can look at each term in a few different ways. One is on the info tab where I can see start and end dates and add drop dates and some statistics and online enrollment. And I can just bounce around from whatever term I want to look at. I can see all the courses I'm offering this term with the instructor names listed next to those courses. And then I can see a list of all the faculty who are tied to courses in that term. And I can see their race. I mean, whatever you've completed for these faculty, age, gender, race, degree, courses, credits, number of enrollments in their courses, and how many auditors they have. And then from here, I can filter that down, or I can export this to a spreadsheet. And on the way out, I can add whatever extra data columns I want. So I could add their address, email, phone, stuff like that. So this is really the only way to report on faculty, and it's a by term thing. So I have to pull up a specific term to do that. I guess another way is I could put in the name faculty and I can look up the faculty role, and I'll be able to see everyone who has an active faculty role, and I can do some communication stuff or just export them and then add a bunch of data fields to on the way out, and then hit go, and I'll have a spreadsheet with all the faculty names, whatever data fields I added, including tags if I want. And then I could mess around with it in a spreadsheet, but that's really the way it would work. Robin, could you show more examples of batch processes? So for the data slicer specifically, let's go ahead and reset this. Okay, we are all reset. I'll go ahead and reload this report. It just depends on the action I want to take. So if I am a financial person and I want to manage their tuition schedules are what determine how a student is charged for tuition. Then I could say I want to add their default tuition schedule for everyone in this particular program. Oh, sorry, this particular default tuition schedule for these 10 people, I want to add, let me say that again, I'm saying it all backwards. For these 10 people, I want to add the architecture program in their default tuition schedule slot. And default tuition schedule just means that every time they enroll for credits in a particular term, then this default tuition schedule is going to pop into that term and charge them accordingly in that term. So it's just going to be the one that pops in every time. Or I could override it on a term-by-term basis and choose a specific term and say, no, I just want to add this tuition schedule in batch to everybody for this particular term. I could also remove a tuition schedule in batch or replace a tuition schedule in batch. So wherever I find this tuition schedule, I want to replace it with this tuition schedule and hit save. Another example of batch stuff would be make everybody a user, and I can hit create users. Populi will give you some information. So you kind of got to click around, I guess, but it just kind of depends on what action you want to take. Lee asks, has thought been given to expanding the data slicer reporting tools so they can be used for non-students? I think we've talked about it, and I think that would be cool. It's not on our developer list right now. We do keep our timeline pretty short, like we don't plan out years in advance for what we're going to be working on. So it could be added to the list. I mean, we try, and one of the benefits of being a small company that helps us really, I think, compete with some of the bigger companies is we can be pretty agile, pretty nimble when it comes to adding new features, especially if certain requirements like federal government stuff all of a sudden throws something our way and we've got to change how 1098Ts are calculated or whatever. We can just jump on that. So we don't really have a rigid timeline. We just, we have things that we talk about, things that get on our timeline for more of a short term that we run through. And right now it's not on that short term thing. One thing though, Lee, is that every table we have in Populi does have a filter mechanism. And when you export it, you can add those extra data columns. So we do have that everywhere in Populi, admissions, financial, academics on kind of a lower level. It's just not quite as complex as this. Sarah asks, what's the advantage or disadvantage of using a custom field versus a tag? I believe everybody can see tags. So I think it's kind of just part of your directory information. Not sure about that. You might want to test that out. Custom fields, it all depends. You can really limit who sees it. So if it's a general admin custom field, then all staff can see it, but not faculty. If it's a student field, then only people who have access to student information can see it. If it's an admissions custom field, then only the admissions people can see it. If it's a financial custom field, all the way. You can have different custom fields by department. So that's a benefit for the custom fields, whereas staff is tags pretty much all staff. Well, all staff can see tags. So it's just not as limited there of who sees what. The other thing is that with a custom field, I can limit the inputs. So let's say, here's one called waiver. I've got 3 choices, and it's kind of a check all that apply kind of a thing. Or I've got visa type, and it's a select box. So I choose between different visa types. So I'm limiting what can be answered here. So I can have a question and then an answer, and I can limit the answer. The handy thing about limiting the answer is that my reporting is probably better, because if I'm just typing in tags and I misspell it, it's going to create a new tag and not be associated with the tag that I wanted it to. Versus if I only allow you to choose 3 options for a custom field, you can't misspell it. You got to choose one of those 3 options. So it's more likely you'll be able to do some reporting on that. Nick asks, is there a way to pull a bulk report of what days students are on campus? Or pull a bulk report of what students are associated with meeting times for more than one campus or more than one class? I'm guessing what you mean by days on campus is their specific schedule. Off the top of my head, this is not a data slicer thing. But you might be able to find it in enrollments or in attendance. So we can look at, but this is all attendance taken, not potential attendance of when they're supposed to be here. Sorry, Nick, off the top of my head, I don't have very good answers for this. We do have a schedule, but this is just all courses, not for specific students. I can export schedules for all my students, but this is going to be kind of like a PDF per student with a schedule in each one so I can hand them out. Let me look at one more place. I can't find anything, Nick, unfortunately. So that might be a good question to reach out to support about and see if they can dig a little deeper instead of trying to answer off the top of their head. But thank you for the question. Tracy says, can we get a list of faculty with the courses they are currently teaching in batch, not one person at a time? So if you go to academic term and choose whatever term you want to look at and click on the faculty table, well, maybe we could do courses, I guess. This would be one way where we can see instructor names next to each course. And you want to see actual names of courses, not just numbers. I think this would be the best way, looking up the courses themselves and seeing the student names or the instructor names and exporting it from here. That's the best answer I have off the top of my head, Tracy. And remember, you can always ask support. Don't be afraid to do that. And if you send them an email, then they can dig into it a little deeper. Can invoicing be done in batch with actions in the data slicer? That's what Robin asked. Robin, no, invoicing is not something you can do on the data slicer side, but you can invoice in batch over here in financial. We give you a table under billing, current and pending charges. This is all charges that have been generated in the system are going to show up here. I can filter this down just like I can any other table, even by a specific charge or by a specific charge type or a specific term, amount type, and then I can invoice everybody all charges in batch here. An anonymous attendee says, can the data slicer be used to see a list of all students who have ever received a certain scholarship? I don't believe we can use a data slicer to dig into financial aid information. No. Well, we can do a dollar amount for expected financial aid for a certain term, but no actual scholarships. To find that information, you want to go to financial aid, and under awards, choose a particular aid year, and you can filter by certain awards. So these would be where the scholarships would live, is here under awards. And aid applications wouldn't be, so yeah, it'd have to be here under awards and the awards table. I can look at it by student or by award name. By student kind of aggregates it. By award, we'll break it out individually, and it's by aid year. Any other questions? All right. If you have any questions, reach out to our support team, especially if you have a specific question about your school. That's a great way to get help. If you have a more nuanced question, like we're not using financial aid, but we want to, how do we do it? Either look up one of our videos, which we have on our YouTube account, or in our help system. We have a financial aid walkthrough, which is really great on our YouTube one for that specific example. Or you can reach out to your Populi account manager, which would be either me, Joseph Schoolin, or Nick Holloway, and have us do a live training webinar, and this is all at no extra cost, with you and your specific team to answer questions about you and your specific data. So those are the few different ways to get help. dig through on your own, send a question to our support team, or if it's more general, you just kind of need to get an overview, then either look at one of our videos or reach out to your account manager and get a training webinar. Bernadette says thank you. You're welcome, Bernadette, and thank you everybody for showing up, and I hope this was helpful. All right, take care, everybody.